A recent study has raised concerns about the potential link between low-carb diets and reduced life expectancy, causing a stir among supporters of carbohydrate-restricted eating patterns. The research, led by cardiologist Professor Dr. Scott D. Solomon from Brigham and Women's Hospital in Boston, suggests that both very low and very high carbohydrate intake may be associated with increased mortality. The lowest mortality rates were observed in individuals who consumed a moderate amount of carbohydrates, approximately 50% of their daily energy intake. These findings have fueled debates about the long-term safety of low-carb diets, particularly among those who follow them for weight loss or metabolic health benefits. The study analyzed data from 15,428 American adults who participated in the Atherosclerosis Risk in Communities (ARIC) study, which began in the late 1980s. Participants provided dietary information at the start of the study and were reassessed several years later. According to the findings, individuals consuming less than 30% of their daily calories from carbohydrates had a significantly higher mortality risk compared to those who maintained a balanced intake. Even though the association was less pronounced, those consuming more than 65% of their calories from carbohydrates also showed an elevated mortality risk. A meta-analysis of additional studies reinforced this U-shaped relationship between carbohydrate intake and mortality, further emphasizing that both extremes may pose health risks. One of the most alarming claims presented in the study is that a low-carb diet could shorten life expectancy by as much as 4 years. This has led to warnings from organizations such as the European Society of Cardiology and the German Society of Cardiology, cautioning against extreme carbohydrate restriction. However, the study has also faced criticism for its methodology, particularly regarding the definition of low-carb. In the study, individuals classified as low-carb were still consuming around 37% of their daily energy from carbohydrates, far higher than what is considered a true low-carb diet by modern standards. Many low-carb advocates argue that this misclassification could skew the results and that the findings may not accurately reflect the effects of well-formulated low-carb diets. Another major concern is the quality of the diet consumed by those in the low-carb group. The study lacks detailed information on the sources of protein and fat in these individuals' diets. Critics argue that in the 1980s and 1990s, dietary guidelines strongly promoted high-carb, low-fat eating patterns, meaning that those who adopted low-carb diets at the time may not have been the most health-conscious individuals. It is possible that their diet choices included unhealthy foods, such as processed meats and fried foods, rather than nutrient-dense options like fish, nuts, and vegetables. This raises the possibility that the increased mortality risk observed in the study may be due more to overall diet quality than carbohydrate restriction itself. Another key finding of the study is that the source of fat and protein in low-carb diets plays a crucial role in determining health outcomes. When participants replaced carbohydrates with animal-based fats and proteins, their mortality risk increased. However, when these macronutrients came from plant-based sources, mortality risk decreased. This suggests that rather than eliminating carbohydrates entirely, individuals may benefit more from prioritizing high-quality plant-based foods while still maintaining a balanced intake of macronutrients. Despite the alarming headlines, experts caution against drawing premature conclusions from this research. The study, like many large observational studies, has limitations, including potential confounding factors that were not fully accounted for, such as alcohol consumption and lifestyle habits. Observational studies can identify associations, but they cannot establish direct causation. More rigorous, long-term randomized controlled trials would be needed to determine whether low-carb diets truly impact longevity. However, such trials are difficult to conduct due to ethical and logistical challenges, making it unlikely that definitive answers will emerge anytime soon. Interestingly, other research suggests that low-carb diets may actually promote longevity by improving metabolic health and reducing cardiovascular risk factors. Studies in animals and short-term human trials indicate that carbohydrate restriction can enhance insulin sensitivity, reduce inflammation, and support cardiovascular health. These potential benefits stand in contrast to the claims that low-carb diets may shorten lifespan, further highlighting the complexity of the issue. While the latest study raises important questions, it does not provide sufficient evidence to conclude that low-carb diets inherently lead to a shorter life. The key takeaway may be that extreme dietary patterns, whether excessively low or high in carbohydrates, could be suboptimal for long-term health. A more balanced approach, incorporating moderate carbohydrate intake with an emphasis on whole, nutrient-dense foods, may be a more sustainable and health-conscious choice. Physicians and nutrition experts continue to recommend diets, such as the Mediterranean diet, which naturally features a moderate carbohydrate intake and a focus on plant-based foods, as a viable and safe approach for long-term well-being.